Welcome, writers, to another episode of the Inspired Writer Collective podcast. Today, I'm so thrilled to introduce you to Anna Dao, who is a memoir writer herself. She's going to speak today about how her background, culture, and heritage helped her in her storytelling. And later in the episode, we're going to dig into how she's now going about marketing her memoir. I think there's going to be so much that you writers will take from her experience and the success that she is finding and how she's marketing her own story. So I welcome you guys and introduce you to Anna. Anna, thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you to all your listeners and viewers for joining us. I was excited when you offered me this platform to come talk about my own experience. So I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so thrilled to have you. I would love if you could just give us a depiction of what storytelling looks like from the West African culture and background, and a little bit of insight into how that influenced your own writing.
Storytelling is just how we are born into it, meaning that because at the time, my generation, I'm in my 60s, grew up with the extended family around, grandparents, great grandparents for some. And I am originally from Mali, which is in the West Africa. And at a time where the elders, grandparents, and great grandparents, not all of them did go to school. And so we have the traditional teaching that basically woved into our lives in terms of every night for as long as I can remember, my grandmother, my great grandfathers, my grandfathers, they all were telling stories. So every night after dinner, you gather around on the terrace. And because the young people are the ones who go to sleep early, then you have tales. And the tales just introduced me to a world of basically paying attention to what was around me, but also because it included animals and it included the parallel world, the invisible world with the genes and the angels. It also introduced me to the non-visible world. And from there, learning to accept that the world is not just what you can see and smell, but that there is another world. So building, teaching you to trust your intuition, the voice that we have, the voice that you have within. And that basically later on, when I decided that, or when I was ready, I don't think that I really decided, but when the story was ready to be told, kind of was the guiding light. Because the thing that is true in memoir, and I believe in every writing, is it has to be true to you. Before it reach out anybody else, Elizabeth, it has to be true to you. If it's not true to you, it's not going to resonate with anybody else. Because people, readers, are intelligent enough and intuitive enough to know exactly when they are reading a book, which one is really comes from the heart and which one is a kind of bunch of words put together just because you feel that you have something to tell.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. That sounds like such a magical childhood, though. Like, and maybe I'm idealizing it, but like the idea of getting to have that multi-generational wisdom imparted through, storytelling that is not always rooted in reality, that plays into imagination or things outside of your, typical five senses. Like, I think that's so cool. And I know when we spoke before, you talked about how so much of it is told by using like proverbs or stories
Yes.
to like just like how memoir does, where like you're not trying to speak necessarily directly to the person and their current situation, but you're kind of talking around it, talking about the broader themes. A lot like more so welcoming someone into the story so that they can
Yes.
take what they're ready to take from it. And for me, that's what I love so much about the memoir genre is because I think it does a similar thing where it simply invites the reader in to your world, to your truth, as you said, and then they get to take from it what they're ready to take from it.
Exactly. And we have a saying, now that you're talking about proverbs, we have a saying that the reason why you tell a story are for three things, right? Number one, those who already know, it helps them remember and see how much they have accomplished. Those who don't know learn to know, and those who really don't care can decide. But it's if even if it's just entertainment, then it has accomplished its purpose because it's either to entertain you, to educate you, or to inspire you. So one of those three. If you have one of those three in your story, and it does that to the people, to the readers, then you have accomplished your purpose.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. That makes me think of too, like what they say in like the sobriety circles and stuff. Like for AA, they talk about just like coming into the room, just being in that space, and you will get something out of it simply by just being in that environment. And I feel like that plays to like that third group that you spoke about that maybe doesn't care, but they might, something might absorb, a seed might be planted that later gets a chance to develop. But yeah, I think that
Yes.
that's beautiful. Now, how has that shaped or impacted your memoir writing when you finally had a story? Like, I love that I forget how you phrased it, but it really, you phrased it in a way that sounded like the story was ready to be born. So when that
Yeah.
story was ready, um, what did that writing process initially look like for you?
It went. It was easy, and easy in the way that I had found my truth. Because for me, the hardest thing, the story was there, but it needed to be in a frame that I could process. Meaning that you can find your voice, but at the time, let me just talk about what happened. So I knew I had a story, but how am I going to tell it? And
Right.
when I first started thinking about writing, at the time there was a lot of self-help books, and I was advised by somebody who wanted to be my agent at the time. But listen, you need to look at what's out there and kind of be similar to them so that it becomes relatable to people. And so I went into the thinking mode of let me find the 12 steps of fixing your life. Never mind that it wasn't how I was taught to do things. It had nothing to do with who I was culturally. And there was nothing for me to hold on to in terms of how do I identify with this, right? And it sounded, the first drafts from that point of view, Elizabeth, sounded fake.
I
There
can
was
so
no
agree.
way, there was no way that I could work through that and get out something. I could get out something, but it was never going to be my story because it sounded so fake. It had nothing to do with it. And then because of my culture, it was yes, I know that you have a culture, but forget about that. You are here now. Try to embrace. And I said, but can I embrace where I am right now without erasing who I was then?
Yeah.
And bridge, do they have to be mutually exclusive, or can I take the best of both worlds? Take what the living here has allowed me to be in terms of freedom and that creativity, and then but also take into account my culture and other things that were taught that shaped me and may help me find my way to write this memoir. And so I had to, number one, that was number one. Number two, in the story, because it was challenging, because I went through a number of trauma, what do you tell and what do you leave alone? What is worth telling? And work through then my own process of the embarrassment, the shame, the pain, the resentment. And I didn't want to hurt anybody. I didn't want anybody to kind of feel embarrassed by my words, even though their action was what triggered my words, right? So I was telling the truth, but I was kind of limiting myself and saying, oh my God, they are going to be so embarrassed if I tell that. I don't want to embarrass them. They are family members. I love them. So I had to kind of look into myself and process why am I such a people pleaser? Why is their opinion more important than my truth?
Right.
And if I write my experience and then they do not agree with it or they are shocked and they are in pain, how much of a relationship do I want to keep and under what circumstances? Because I have to live with myself, right? And so it's when I had worked all these out with the help of my late grandmother, then who told me that, when you're doing this, Anna, are you telling your truth? And I was like, yes. Then do it because it's your truth, and your truth, nobody has to agree with it. Because even if you say, that was my late grandmother, she said, even if you say something about me that I do not agree with, it's your truth. It's how you feel about it. And that's valid, and that should be good enough. So once I kind of went through that, then it became easier. That's why I say it became easier to write, because it means that I embrace my emotions, and then I let my internal process it so that then it can came out as words for the
And
readers.
that's such a common concern that so many people have when they're writing their memoirs, and I quickly wanna say I also started with this combo of, like, self-help anecdote from my own life kinda thing, and then when I reread that initial draft, like, the parts where I was, like, talking directly to the reader and very like, "You should do this, and you can do this, and if you haven't considered this, try this." It just didn't sound like me, and I had that same realization that I needed to just keep my story just about me and not let people take what they wanted from it, right?
Mhm.
Um, but then this challenge that you're talking about here about what is your truth and the judgment that you might receive from people who see themselves in your story, whose story butts up next to yours, like how do you handle that? And I think what you hit on is what something that I talk to the women that I coach through my memoir coaching program through, and it's talking about keeping it rooted in your feelings and your experience of the event versus trying to state it in such a way as if it is concrete fact and what their motives were or what their things may have been. But if you keep the lens, if you keep the focus on here's how I experienced it, here's how I
Yep.
felt it, here's how
Mm.
I interpreted it, then it does still leave a beautiful amount of room for other people's stories and for them to disagree and not feel like you are putting some kind of capital T truth into stone. You are
Exactly.
simply speaking your truth from your perspective. And I think that once if you initially come to a story, I initially came to some of my traumatic stories with the sense of vengeance and I'm gonna, get some justice and I'm gonna right this wrong, that was done to me. But by the time I went through a couple of rounds of edits, like, it didn't look like that at all, because there's so much evolution and healing that you have
Mhm.
as the writer, as you're going through this process. But ultimately, keeping the focus on the feelings that came about, the ways in which you experiencing some sort of trauma were rationalizing it or intellectualizing it or how you were processing through it, that's what's gonna be relevant to the reader.
Absolutely.
That's what they're gonna take from it, and that's typically I mean, people are gonna be upset if they're upset, right? Like you said, you
Mhm.
kinda have to decide what space you're gonna give to your truth
Mhm.
and how comfortable you are you know, standing in that and the ways that that could impact relationships. But if it's a relationship that's only held together because you're silencing your truth, then
Yep.
maybe it's not a relationship that's has value carrying forward. So it just kind of depends where you sit with it. But the evolution you go through as a writer in that process is also incredibly impactful. Did you experience that for yourself?
It was therapeutic, absolutely, because, and maybe more true for memoir than anything else, I don't think that you can rush a memoir,
Mm,
because as you dig in to kind of pull out the things that are going to be the story, you also are dealing with it years after it had happened or decades after it had happened. And so viewing it from your rear view mirror, pulling it out and facing it again, you're going to have emotions are going to rise, right? uh Things that you don't remember are going to come up, whether it's pain, whatever it is, but it's going to come up. And then you're going to have what happened with me is that then as the healing process happened, as then I was putting the words down,
mhm.
right? And that's where it takes time because after putting the words down, uh, there's an editorial process because first you put the raw words as they come out with your heart, with everything that is like in you at that moment. But everything that is in you at that moment, if you only keep that, is going to be a very like high mix of emotions, but it's not necessarily going to be the best stories.
Right.
So there is that editorial process that you have to come back with. You kind of, after you come down, and that's at least after I came down, sat, looked at it and said, oh, okay, yes, I get it. But you know what? You need to come down here because I understand when you were writing, there are passages when I was writing them, I was still in pain. So the pain is the thing that you see most. But I didn't want the story to be lost in the pain. The pain is part of the story, but the pain is not cannot be the story.
Right, it's the catalyst, but it's not the whole
Yes,
plot.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so that's basic. That's also the basic. And something that you said that I c- I think I totally agree with you is that when you were referring back to the time where you wanted to talk as I have solutions for you, and the reason why that didn't the 10 steps or the 12 steps to like fulfilled or the lesson learned didn't work for me is because that's not the way how the elders taught us. Just as you have storytelling with tales at night, when we were playing, because children of the same age, same group age, always play together, were seen together. And basically, when you made a decision, I remember my grandmothers and grandfathers always asking me, I have this problem. What did you think? It wasn't what solution did you bring to the problem, but what did you think? How was your thinking process? How did you come to that solution before even telling me what to do? And then after I said, well, this is how, well, you were angry. So you let your anger make the decision for you. And then my question would be, so how would you have solved it? Well, did you take into account that maybe in the heat of a debate you were hurting such and such feelings, or maybe they didn't have? And so kind of giving perspective before telling me that's how I would do it. So that throughout the process, you are invited to always think things through.
That's beautiful.
Always. There is a process. And the reason why to me it's so relevant is that even in our world today, sometimes you get asked questions and people are in such a hurry to answer. A question is basically something that is telling you to pause, to reflect before you provide an answer. But we are in such a like, everything has to be right away, right away, right away. But sometimes we forget to give ourselves that grace period of realizing that first of all, we don't have the answer to everything. And second of all, take a moment so that you find what is true for you. And what is true for you, in fact, what is true for me might not be something that you agree with, Elizabeth, but that's okay, right? We can agree to disagree, or we can find compromises. But I do not need to have the answer right away, and I certainly don't know everything. And I like that because that attitude kind of kept me in a state of humility where I'm always seeking, when I'm always looking for the truth, my truth. Doesn't need to be true for everybody, but as long as it's my truth, then I'm comfortable. And that is so important, whether it's fiction writing, nonfiction writing, memoir. It is so important in storytelling to be able to say that you're coming from your place of truth. Anybody, because your place of truth, I promise you, will resonate with others.
Mm. You're making me think too a lot about how, like, as a parent, I'm so quick to want to solve the problem, right? Like,
Mhm.
my daughter's having an issue. I've got a solution. I'm going to like quickly volunteer the solution. But this is really making me think like how our job as parents is more like teach your child the process of solving their own problems, right? So, like
Yep.
what you said about how the elders would then encourage you, like, well, what's your thought process around this? How did you get to this solution? Like to help grease those wheels and create those patterns for yourself so that as you
Mhm.
grow up, you can then do that for yourself without having to be prompted, like, okay, am I really thinking through this? Is there something else I need to consider? Have
Mhm.
I love
A-
that. I think that's
And,
something that I want to apply.
and also, Elizabeth, it gives you a voice.
Mhm.
It teaches you to hear your own voice. Somebody comes to you, right? And instead of saying, but okay, this is what I would have done, you start telling that child, well, what did you think? How did you feel? How did you see this problem? And what were some of the solutions that you thought about? Then I think the undertone behind it is that you're encouraging that child to have to form their own opinion, to be
Mhm.
able to express and defend that opinion, regardless of don't don't look at right or wrong. Have an opinion and be confident enough to express yourself. Defend it if you need to, but also be open by then interjecting what your solution or what you thought of it, but then be open to hear something else that has nothing to do with maybe how you approached it. So that you make the bridge between how you thought it was supposed to be done and what that person is bringing on the table that you hadn't thought about.
Right. Yeah, so true. So, once you eventually overcame like these hesitations around sharing your story and you were going to write your truth, how
Mhm.
long was your memoir writing process, would you say?
Uh, when the real draft, the true draft started, a year and a half, 2 years.
Okay. Yeah, I think
Uh,
that's pretty typical and maybe even on the like lower end for a first time, like a person writing something of long form for the first time. So
yes.
that
Yeah,
makes
two
sense.
years. Because I was, and the reason why the first draft, and then I think I went through the editorial process because at some point you get tired of hearing your own voice.
You
You know
have
the
to get
story
that
so
outside
well that
perspective.
it's like, okay, I'm good now. I need somebody else. And
Right.
that's the best decision. Honestly, Elizabeth, that's the best decision that I've made was to be able to choose to go through 2 rounds of editorial process before even the submission process. Because having two people who didn't know each other, had no clue, read the story and come back with feedback helped me first of all put my ego in check in terms of realizing that okay, the story is not perfect, so
Right.
it still has room for improvement. Improved it, accept or refuse the editorial changes, right? Make sure that the story resonated, take the criticism in, and once that was then done, the story was polished enough for me to go through the submission process.
Right. So once you had your book in hand, Finding Lala's Anna, what did
Yes.
that feel like for you? And were you immediately like, "Oh, I've gotta tell everyone about this story," or, like, was there a little bit of, like, any sort of trepidation or fear about then broadcasting the story and marketing your story?
Trepidation and fear. Trepidation because it was a labor of love. It was
Mm.
really, this was truly a labor of love. Fear because then I had to tackle the other part of the journey, which is marketing and getting the words out. And that was something that foreign to me.
Pour into so many memoir writers,
Thank
and
you.
one of the pieces that I think keeps a lot of people either stuck and not moving forward or solely pursuing a traditional publishing route where they think that the publisher is going to take care of all of that for them. Although we say over and over again on this podcast that if you're a debut author, even in traditional publishing, they're going to expect you to do your own marketing.
Yeah.
So, what did that process look for like for you initially? How have you evolved your marketing? How have you gotten more comfortable? And what sort of successes have you seen?
Okay. So initially I was shy because I didn't like talking about myself. It was like, oh my gosh, why do I have to talk about myself? Why can't you just buy the book and tell me that it's wonderful? and then we all move on happy. Uh, so I
Great. Leave a review. Tell me it's excellent, and let's move on.
everyone, And so it was the first time creating a website, asking my friends, because at that time, then working up the courage to go to friends and say, I need your help.
Yeah.
I need to put the words for this book out. And so, learning to talk in front of people, like small venue where I build up my voice. And for all that, that allowed me. So the book has been out. This is the second year. April 24th is going to be the second year that it's been out. And I'm working on my second project right now. But uh, from the time it went out to today, I can say that it has been a beautiful, challenging, and yet conquering my own fear. So that, first of all, I recognize my voice and polish it. I can, the first website, I revamped it and built an entire new site because I had a vision. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I knew exactly the purpose of that website. Putting myself out there, I have no problem telling you that I am a storyteller, I am a spiritual advisor, and this is why I claim it and own it. And as I do that, what is great, Elizabeth, is that doors that have started opening up because I'm putting myself out there, right? Uh, Lo and behold, actually, I do have something interesting to say, and I do have things to say that might interest people. So that was a shock, but I'm over it, right? And so now it's embracing that and embracing the journey of writing as a business.
Yeah.
Not the romanticized version of, oh, I'm going to be a writer, I'm going to write, and then I'm going to get published, and then everything is going to be. No, it's a business. And as a business, compliance, taxes, keeping receipts, and making sure that everything is in order. My personal life, Anna, the private citizen, has nothing to do with another businesswoman. And those are two entities that really need to be separated for taxes reason, first and foremost, but also to know that, okay, the revenue that are being created in the business belong to the business. What I do for the 9 to 5 belongs to. So it's all that, embracing the business and wearing the hats as you are.
So I'm curious. Well, first I want to highlight, like you described, you had your website and you've already since revamped it. And so one thing I want to highlight is that we as writers, especially once we put our book out there, you got to put something up. And it's okay if it's not the perfect version and it's not how you ultimately want it to be and it's not all polished and everything. There's plenty of time. As someone said in our recent memoir summit, your book is new to anyone who hasn't heard about it yet. So there's no dead time of like, oh, you missed your chance to market your book, or you missed your chance because now it's been out for a year or 2 years. And you just have to put something up. So I just wanted to break that down a little bit to highlight for the writers who are listening that you just have to do something, right? You just have to have a website. It's okay if it's not the polished future version that you envision because you've just finished writing the book and you're doing the launch and you've got a lot of different hats to wear and it's all new. That's okay. You will have time, to revamp that later on down the road if that's what you need to do. But just get something up as a landing page to direct your readers to encourage them to leave reviews, to purchase your book. That's sufficient in the beginning.
Absolutely. And if people don't know where to find you, if there's not something out there that they can look at, what is the incentive to take your book when there are so many people writing and putting books out there? That is your marketing tool. It's your professional ID.
What I'm curious because I'm not quite yet at the marketing stage. So my book is publishing at the end of June. So I am curious from a personal standpoint, Do you have you felt like it's harder or required more growth or development from you to write the book or to market the book? Which has been like the biggest like challenging growth period for you?
Different challenges, I would say the same amount of growth because it all came, writing the book came from initially was a perception that, oh, I have a story to write, it's going to be so easy. And then I came out of that phase. Marketing was, well, one reality fit, right? Marketing came from, oh, well, if I write with great book, what do I need marketing for? And then I had to come out of that phase and realize that, listen, yes, you might think that you're a gift to the world, but the world doesn't know who you are. So,
Right, it could
um,
be a great book, but
it could be a great book,
people aren't
but
gonna know. Yeah.
you know, so there it was when going back to the drawing board and said, okay, I have this product that I stand by. Who can help me put it out there? And it's reaching out to friends. It's having a website. It's having a Facebook page where even if I'm talking in front of two people, I'm going to put it out there and say, listen, I need your support. Come see me. This is what I'm doing. And then because your friends also have friends. So exactly. So you put it out there, they share with their friends, and then that's how people slowly. My neighborhood, people know that I'm the writer because at one of the cafe, I went and brought the book as a sample and asked the cafe owner because at least I'm there once a week. It's my
Mm.
favorite place, one of the favorite places to go. So the owner knows me, and I went to her and I'm like, I just got this book out. Is it okay if I put the sample here? And she was like, oh, Anna, it's you. That's just fine. And my book has been there. So people come in every day for their coffee or whatever, seeing it. The sample is
Mhm.
there. And I have orders from people who I have never met who went there and said, oh, wow, you know the writer? And when they're like, okay. And she would tell me, such and such came in and, they said that they ordered the book. I had
Oh.
people, she ordered the book, put it there. And on Saturdays when I went, I signed the books for them. So there are no small spaces. I'm about to say that there are no small spaces. Your favorite coffee shop is a way to go. Your favorite library is a place to go. If you do Pilates somewhere, don't hesitate. If you do yoga somewhere, it's
Right.
everybody, you promote
You're a
wherever you are.
patron of all these other businesses, and they're also small businesses, just like
Exactly.
being a writer, and they're usually
Exactly.
happy to support you.
To
Yeah,
just
you
to
support
support
them,
you.
they
So
support you.
exactly. And so that's why the words get out. And that's why I feel so much more confident now because with this for the past year and a half, almost 2 years, what happened is that I've been learning and refining the tools of marketing. And now that I'm almost done doing the second book, it's going to get much easier because now I have the platforms already, right?
Yeah.
I know where to go for certain things for publicity. I know who to call to have and have what you call it a poster uh, on their magazine, how much it costs, and all that, because those are the things that I've learned this time around, and they are the things that make things easier. So it's a learning process, and I am much more comfortable with it today than I was when I initially started.
Now, as you're talking about these different marketing things, I get the impression, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that you're not, doing a bunch of TikToks or Instagram reels or doing like orbiting a lot on social media other than to tell people where they can find you in the real world. And that you're mostly in the physical world in like taking part in like readings or setting up signings for yourself or things like
Mhm.
that. Is that correct? Is that how you've approached
Absolutely.
marketing?
Absolutely. Because I am building. And the people that I talk to are the people then that go on Instagram and on Facebook and follow me,
Mhm.
right? And
Right.
so when I put on Instagram or TikTok, because that's a lot of work. And this is also the thing that I would like to emphasize, quality over quantity.
Oh, yes. But we get so burned
And
out on when we're trying to do all the quantity
Elizabeth,
type stuff.
exactly. I rather have two posts in the week then too many posts, Monday and Thursday, let's say, or Sunday or whatever, then have one every other day or one. I want to do something every time that I put something out there because of the effort that it takes. I want something that people are going to be are going to like, or are going to find relatable, not necessarily like, let's say relatable, something that is pleasing to their eyes, but has content of substance. So I don't have substance every day. Sometimes I'm very vain. So there has to be this balance, right? And if I put something regularly at a rhythm that I can sustain, it's much more productive than trying to chase. Having it every day for me is chasing. For me, it
Right.
can work for somebody else, but for me, it's chasing because right now I'm still building the platforms, but I am also getting exposure.
Well, that and for you and so many other writers, you've got another project you're working on, right? So, like,
Yes.
it's not just that your focus shifts from then writing the book to marketing the book because you're marketing book one, but then you're starting another writing project. And a lot of
Mhm.
people have additional writing projects, even if it's not another full length memoir, even like I have some plans before I write my next memoir to work on some short stories and to
Yes.
find some nice, literary journals as homes for some of those stories that got cut from this book. And so, we all have other writing projects that we're working
Yes.
on where we can't all always just dig 100% into,
Yes.
all of our writing time becomes now marketing time.
Absolutely.
I just think it's such a breath of fresh air to hear you talk about it and the ways that you show up. I know, when we spoke before, I wonder if you would share with this audience, you set up some readings and you went and did some readings and had some great success by sharing your own voice, sharing this, portion of
Mhm.
your story.
Mhm.
Will you share a little bit about that experience and what that looked like for you?
Okay, so I started with being very, my voice was shaking when I first started reading, right? And it was like, okay, so where's the book? What page? Where do I read from? And then I started relaxing. And what is beautiful, whenever I share a story, whether it's from the book or just from personal experience, but have inspired some of the stories of the book, is that people are very receptive. The last one that I did was February 25th. Can we kick it? It's a place in Harlem. And I was supposed to talk for 8 minutes, but they let me talk for 12 minutes about a story. And you know what was the most gratifying part of it is that even though I went over time, the the audience and I were so in sync that uh, the host decided to let me run and just let me finish the story. And Elizabeth, I had brought uh, uh, 10 copies of my memoir just in case anybody was interested. And I sold 8 that night after
Oh,
the story.
cool. Well, and it's
So,
just a reminder to people who are nervous or hesitant about sharing their voice, sharing their stories that, like,
mhm,
if people can just get a snippet of
yep,
what that looks like, what your storytelling style is, how you phrase things, they're gonna if they resonate with even a fraction of your story, they're gonna be much more likely to then
absolutely.
purchase your book.
I was amazed because I was like, oh, you want the book now? Okay, let me be humble. Okay, thank you. But it was nice. It was the most validation. It was validating. And having people right there saying, oh, wow, you have the book? I'll buy it. That to me was the greatest compliment.
That and I feel like those purchasers are gonna be such big advocates of your book because they already knew they resonated with the part that you shared in the reading, right?
Mhm,
And so
mhm,
instead of just someone who hears about it or buy it because a friend tells them about it and they may or may not enjoy it, like those are 8 readers that have a much higher likelihood of really enjoying the book, leaving you a review, wanting to
yes.
purchase whatever else you may write in the future, like
Yes,
that because they resonated with your story from the beginning
absolutely.
before ever purchasing your book.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yes, that was nice. And
Beautiful.
it also helps in terms of reinforce reassuring me and my fears about my voice,
Yes.
because
Yeah, that had to be
you
so
can
validating.
it's, yes, it's very validating to
You
say,
bring a
okay,
stack of 10 books hoping to
say my
sell maybe
yeah,
one
a
or
couple
two,
and
and then you look
and
out with
then
just 2 left.
to a left, and you're like, oh gosh, yes. But also your voice, the things that you coming from another culture,
Mhm.
now having been told for so many years that I needed to tone it down, but I needed having people interested because it's from another culture, and having people embrace that part, right? That unfamiliarity part for them, and said, yeah, you know what you're saying is universal,
Yes.
right? It's not just a culture, it is universal. The emotions are universal. That to me is kind of validating and kind of reassuring and say, you know what, yeah, never stop talking about your culture because that's what shaped you. I am not a so I tell stories the way I heard stories being told to me. It was always conversation. They didn't write, they just talked to us. And so when I write, I feel that I'm talking to a leader.
Yeah.
So I
It's
keep it
that
simple.
sentiment that gives me hope for our world. The fact that I know from experience that those emotions are universal, those feelings are universal, even
Absolutely.
if it's, has this sort of packaging on it or this sort of cover or, like it's there's so much universality to that. And I mean, when Stephanie and I started this business over 2 years ago and started this podcast as a part of it, it was that we were really leaning into, like, this is our way of, quote unquote, saving the world, right? And it is
Absolutely.
bringing
Absolutely.
people together and showing people, like, how easy it is to be able to relate to people once you know their story because you're always
Absolutely.
gonna find overlap. I mean,
Absolutely.
your story about, coming from West Africa, from Mali, and then going through this writing process, like, I relate so much to your the way in which you had to go through your writing process that I feel connected to you, even though we have vastly different cultural background,
Absolutely.
we're,
Absolutely.
different age ranges, like, but there's just something so beautiful about the ways that we get to connect when people are willing to share their truths, use their voice, and show up, and I just think that's beautiful.
And talking about age, I think that writing is one of those uh, medium where you're never too old to start.
No. Or too
There's
young.
no such thing, too young or too old. You have 15-year-old who can write books, and you're like, where did you come from? And you have so it's a spectrum. I mean, it's the one thing that leaves me still wondering when I look at the books that have been written or that are being written right now. It's the one thing that you will never get bored. You will always find something interesting to read. But in order to find something interesting to read, somebody has to write it. And
And
so
tell
it's
you
one of
about
those
it.
things. I tell you about it. And so it's
Yeah.
one of those things where, yeah, and it's interesting because with the progress of AI and all the fear that AI has created, and people who are using it, oh, you can write a book in in 30 minutes or in 2 days. I'm like, nah. And more, which is refreshing, I'm seeing the publishing world saying we do not accept AI books because that authentic voice cannot be duplicated.
Mhm.
Our authentic voices as storytellers cannot be duplicated.
Right.
And that to me is refreshing. It really gives me hope.
Yeah. And if someone listening is a memoir writer but is not sure how to write their own story, there are ghostwriters. You can hire a ghostwriter to help you write your story, and they can keep it in your same, tone of voice. And that is a very valid way to publish your
Yes,
story if you feel like you don't have the skill set or the time to learn the skill set, or any of that. There are other options for sharing your story. that don't
totally.
involve having to put it into AI and be regurgitated out something that's, like, pseudo emotional, and
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
real. There's also, you don't have to share your story in long form memoir. I mean, I interviewed a woman, and was earlier on in the podcast, so it's been a long time, um, Lenore Rattray, and she turned her story into a, like, podcast series. So,
Mhm.
if you feel like you are, like you say, with the West African storytelling tradition, if you feel like spoken orated storytelling is really your forte versus putting it into writing, that's also a very valid form of sharing your story. And there's ways to
Absolutely.
monetize that. There's ways, to have that serve you and build a platform for yourself and things as well. But
Absolutely.
let's not use AI.
Yes. But I'll tell you, Elizabeth, for me, it was so refreshing to see that publishing world is saying, not everybody, but at least I'm seeing that there is kind of in terms of integrity, but there are some of them saying that no, 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 no. We need the stories. We don't need something that, AI is producing. We need the voices of the people.
Yeah, for sure. As we wrap up this episode today, and I'm so glad you were here with me today, is
Thank
there
you for having
any
me.
last thing you want to share with these writers that we didn't cover? It could be totally like a totally different topic that we didn't go into today, or anything else related to what we've talked about that you want to share before we sign off.
I would just say to anybody who wants to write, do it. Even if you're afraid, even when you think that you're not good, just give it a try. See where it leads you. Because the story that you see uh, published started with a draft, maybe 10 drafts, before it got to the point where it was good enough for somebody else to take a look at it and edit it, right? Or, as you have said, Elizabeth, ghostwriting. But if you want, so you have people who can, and I've seen it, people can capture your voice, capture your emotion and put it in words. And then you read it, reread it, and kind of familiarize yourself with it until you're comfortable with it. Those are the ghostwriters. Or you do it yourself and you give yourself grace and you give yourself patience, right? So that the story that is supposed to come out of you, because I think that writing, yes, it's an intellectual process, but it's also a gut wrenching process. The truth has to come from the gut, and then the mind process it into and put it into words, right? And so give yourself grace and give yourself time to really go within inside yourself, heal whatever it is that you need, so that your mind can process it and then turn them into words. That's it.
Right, and don't judge yourself from your first draft, because your first draft is
Yes.
gonna be crappy.
Oh
It's
my God.
exactly what it's meant to be. It's serving that purpose. I can say that my first draft looks nothing like my book now. I have a feeling you could probably say the same.
Amen. Amen. No, the first draft was the ego crushing draft. It was like,
Right.
because I wrote it and I was like, it's perfect. And then somebody came and started editing and said, redundant, 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 repetitive, repetitive. What is this? It doesn't belong. And I'm like, you don't understand. And then, once I got over, once my ego kind of recovered, then I went back and started seeing the truth of the critics, and then I rewrote it again. But it was like it helped brings the ego down. It did for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Anna, for being here today. Everyone, you can find the links to connect with Anna in the show notes and purchase her book, Finding Lala's Anna. And we hope you'll join us again next week. Thank you.